Hey, welcome to Bleav in Clemson Football. I'm Will Vandervoort. That's Alex Dodd, our producer over there. Thanks for joining us. Apologize for some technical difficulties we had earlier.
I
Uh, that,
had.
that,
I
that
had.
well, Alex, I was just going to take the blame for all of us.
But it's great when your producer can't get on the internet. That's always a good sign for the show.
And that's why we were having issues. Alex was having issues getting on. And so we got it worked out, though. We're on, and we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere where you get it, we appreciate you guys. Obviously, you didn't see any of it or have to wait longer because you're just getting the download and listening to us. So we appreciate you listening to us. We appreciate everyone out there on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter that are watching us. We appreciate you guys, or X, excuse me. I do it every week. You think
Come on, man. It's been X for like 2 years, man.
Yes, it has been. And but anyway, I'll get with the times eventually, Alex. But we appreciate all you guys watching us now, and think we got a good show tonight, Alex. We're gonna have some Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney talking about C.J. Spiller. He's gonna be talking about Tony Elliott. We're also going to have Tony Elliott talking about Dabo Swinney. So we should have a pretty good podcast here. And, of course, you have me and Alex running our mouths as well. As we get you set for Clemson versus Virginia this week, as it's weird that they didn't make this game homecoming, right?
I was thinking the same thing all week. It's like you had such a great opportunity to make this a homecoming game and, I mean, really do up the story of Tony coming back. I mean, you got CJ going in the Ring of Honor too. I mean, it just seems like this is the homecoming game, right? I mean, Stanford was, but this really is. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Also, October is more of homecoming, not September when they did Stanford game. It just didn't seem right. It seemed kind of icky a little bit to call it homecoming. And then, of course, hurricane came through, and that made it even a little more complicated. Made the homecoming different. But anyway, regardless, it is a homecoming for Tony Elliott, as he will be coming home to Clemson, where he played from 1999 to 2003 and was a captain for Dabo Swinney when Dabo Swinney was first-year wide receivers coach at Clemson. Then later on came back as Dabo Swinney's running backs coach, which he held that position from 2011 to 2015. And then came over as it became Clemson's co-offensive coordinator at that point and running backs coach, and then kept that up until Jeff Scott left and he became the coordinator on his own. And then obviously the tight ends coach when C.J. Spiller came on. So Tony Elliott has, he was there for 11 years with Dabo Swinney from 2011 to 21, and then also the 1 year he played under him. And their relationship in those years from 03 to 11, which still they talked every day. Dabo thinks of Tony like a little brother, if you will. And so because I think it's more like a brother kind of thing than a kid kind of thing, like he is with CJ. But a great relationship nonetheless, and it's awesome that Tony's coming back, and it's great, good storyline all week long.
Yeah, and I think obviously we're going to talk more about CJ later, but when I think about games that CJ Spiller should be recognized, playing Virginia in Death Valley is very fitting for him to be recognized. Obviously, you have like the iconic picture of him coming down the hill with the flag on senior day. I had that poster on my wall growing up as a kid. So it just seems fitting that this is the game they're going to do that.
Yeah, it is. It's very fitting. Well, first of all, before we get into the podcast, I mentioned what we're going to talk about this week. I want to go ahead and give credit to our sponsors, the Clemson Insider, the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics and Clemson recruiting. If you want to know everything about this week's game against Virginia, go to the Clemson Insider. You can find out all those things. Yours truly will be writing a column about C.J. Spiller this week, so you want to be on the lookout for that. We'll also have recruiting, basketball, baseball news. Alex, I actually had both last week. We had ACC Media Days in basketball last Thursday. The day before, we had baseball started fall practice. We talked to Coach Backich and stuff like that. You can go to the Clemson Insider and look at those articles and stories from what we covered. And we'll have more coming down the pike. I can tell you that right now because Clemson Insider covers all things Clemson athletics, not just Clemson football and recruiting, but all things Clemson athletics. So give it a check if you haven't been there before. And by the way, it's free. And if it's free, it's for me, right?
That's what you're talking about. 5-figure discount.
So anyway, appreciate you guys being with us. And Alex, we'll get going here, and we'll just start talking about Clemson's 49-14 victory over Wake Forest this past Saturday in Winston-Salem. First of all, a shout out to Clemson Nation for coming out in droves Saturday. I know you watched it on TV. I was there. Alex, what did it look like on TV? Because I know it looked like it was like all orange.
I mean, like the first shot of the broadcast, you have Taylor McGregor standing there in front of the stands, and all you see is just a wall of orange and white behind. I don't think I saw anybody wearing black on that side of the stadium on the TV broadcast. And then you can hear it too when you're watching the game that Clemson had an active crowd. Honestly, it gave me kind of Steelers vibes on Sunday in Las Vegas with all the black and gold, no silver. It was a lot like that. Hostile takeover of Winston-Salem.
It was, and I would say it was probably somewhere 60-40, close to 70-30 maybe, because even on the other side of the field that you couldn't see on TV, a lot of orange over there too, where Wake Forest has their regular like big boosters and stuff like that Clemson people were sitting in their seats. So it was like Wake Forest only sits 31,500. It's the smallest Power 5 stadium in the country, and Clemson probably had 20,000 people there.
I mean, when I saw that it was a sellout, I was like, dang, it must be a lot of Clemson people going up for a noon game in Winston-Salem, trying to get some Biscuitville, get a little Krispy Kreme in.
Absolutely.
Whatever you got to do up there.
Yeah, I got some Krispy Kreme in. I was 2 minutes. Our hotel was 2 minutes from the original Krispy Kreme. So we went up there, and of course, it was wonderful. You know why, Alex? Because
it was hot now, baby. Hot now.
Hot light was on, and I was like, yes, yes, yes. And I ran in there, got me that and a True Moo chocolate milk, got me a dozen donuts. And they were delicious.
You ate a dozen donuts by yourself?
No, unfortunately I didn't.
Our guest next week is going to give you grief.
I promise I didn't eat. I did not eat all 6 donuts. Bart Boatwright, our photographer, shared with me, and then I brought them back, the rest of them back home, and Kevin ate half of what I brought back home. So I did not eat all 6. I probably ate total of 6 of the 12.
Sounds good.
Or 5 of the 12 because Bart had 1, so I would eat 5. So
and speaking of people who
Kevin ate 6, so Kevin ate the most. Go ahead.
Speaking of people who ate in the game, Phil Maffa, he ate a lot in the game. Cade Klubnik ate a lot in the game. DeMonte Capehart, I'm pretty sure he actually ate the center for Wake Forest during the game. I mean, that's kind of the theme for Clemson, is that they were just eating all over the field on Saturday.
They were. It was a very dominating performance. One that, and here's, as we'll start this here, I was impressed with the way Clemson, they got off to a slow start, and they didn't look very good offensively or defensively in that first quarter. And yet, and especially the guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit, Cade Klubnik. He, last year when he go on the road and he struggled and he missed a wide open pass that would have probably went for a touchdown. I'm talking about the overthrow to Troy Stellato. It would take him a while to get over it or to calm down, right? But he didn't let it faze him. He stuck with what he knows and what the defense was giving him. And that's how the whole team did. They just kind of stuck with the game plan. They didn't panic. And then by the second quarter, they just started taking control of the game. And, it was the offense basically was going through the Wake Forest defense like a knife through a butter, right? I mean, that's
and that's what really impressed me about the game was, Clemson's recipe for success going into the game was, get a big lead in the first quarter and kind of hold on. Mm-hmm. And, they weren't able to replicate the success in the same way, that things didn't come as easy in the first quarter, but they found a way to overcome it, and they did. They rolled after that point, offensively, defensively, especially in the second half defensively. The way they were able just to really annihilate Wake Forest and not let them do anything. But they overcame the slow start. They settled in, and they didn't let it faze them. They were uncomfortable in the first quarter, and they found a way to get back to normal.
Yeah, Clemson's defense And you know me, I love defense, and I love to watch it and pay attention. I was not at first understanding what West was doing defensively. I thought he could have brought some more pressure, but he kind of did later on, especially where he would bring Barrett Carter, and he actually at times would have. I know a couple times he had all three linebackers out there. And then, but he consistently saw something on the edge that they could do with their linebackers, and they brought out that they would bring either Wade Woodaz or he'd bring Barrett Carter, blitzing them on the X to get that extra guy instead of bringing them up the middle. He did it that way, and I think that maybe that had a lot to do with that mesh on what Wake Forest running back. He likes to kind of like look for the hole and spot it, and he sometimes will hit that B gap, which is between the tackle and the guard. And he would hit that B gap, and that's the way he was running. So what he do? You just bring the linebacker over there, and you kind of force the issue to where he's got no choice but to go to the A gap. And of course, Clemson's got the A gap filled, and they just really shut him down. I think after the first quarter, they didn't do anything running the football wise. I think they finished the game with only 187 yards rushing. I Bleav that's correct. Yeah. And they got most of that on the opening drive.
Yeah, didn't they have like 36 yards or something in the second half? I mean, it was
38 total yards in the second half.
Yeah.
They finished with 87 yards rushing, 233 total yards after having 195 total yards at halftime. So West did a great job adjusting to what they were doing, and Clemson's team, and they really the players stayed with the game plan when they adjusted, and they dominated. They were dominant. And, they had the one late drive there at the end of the half that they gave up a touchdown. Other than that, that was it. I mean, Wake Forest did nothing in the second, and minus 11 yards total offense in the third quarter.
Well, another guy that I was really impressed with on the defensive side of the ball was Wade Woodaz. You mentioned him. He kind of had a slow start, looked a little uncomfortable early in the game, and really settled in to his role. Ended up with a sack, ended up with 6 tackles to lead the team. Just got a lot more comfortable. And I think part of that is the way that Wake Forest plays. It's hard to replicate.
It's weird, man.
It's hard to replicate that slow mesh in practice.
Yeah.
And, early in the game, you could see that it was making Clemson uncomfortable. They weren't able to get the pressure in the A gap like you were talking about. They weren't able to really adjust to that tempo early in the game. But after that first quarter, I mean, they had Wake Forest's number, and the slow mesh wasn't working anymore. And you saw Wake Forest kind of later in the game go away from it a little bit, try to do some other things, and that didn't work. But Wade Woodaz, I felt like he really settled in and adjusted and just looked in his element after kind of some early struggles.
And the play that really kind of changed the game, I thought, was Kylan Griffin's interception, where, I asked him at the end of the game, and I don't know if you saw that interview, Alex. I asked him, like, what was different? Like, what did you see on that play? And he says, actually, we practiced that play all week long. And he says, I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is the play. They're running it. I'm going to intercept this ball. And he thought to himself, I'm going to take it to the house. He's like, obviously I got to finish because he stumbled. The turf monster is real, is what he says. He would have scored a touchdown on it. But that play changed the game, I thought, from that point on, because Clemson had just scored, tied it up 7-7, and then immediately the offense gets the ball back. And here's what I love about the offense, right? Boom, 2 plays. They're in the end zone. Beautiful seam route down to a Brittingstool that puts the ball down at the 1 yard line. I actually thought he scored on that play, and Clemson probably could have reviewed it, but they're like, no, just run up to the line real fast. We'll have film off pound it on in. I'm always under the belief coaches should wait a little bit to see if that is, because it was so close. I thought he got in the end zone, but it ended up working out anyway. But that's, you give credit to the Clemson defense and offense right there. That is what you call working together as a team right there. You get the turnover, and immediately you turn it into 7 points.
Yeah, and you could see too a little fire from the offense. They didn't like the way that some of those drives ended at Florida State, having to settle for 3. And they didn't have to do that at Wake Forest. They just said, hey, we're just going to take it in for a touchdown, and we're not going to worry about kicking field goals. And you kind of see that fire in them in that second quarter. And one thing I kind of want to ask you about, Will, to get your impression, it seems like with this Clemson defense, maybe they're not as good down to down as they have been in recent years, but they're able to create pressure and force turnovers to where they kind of mask some of those things. Is that kind of what you're seeing from the defense too? That maybe down for down, they're not going to be up in that total defense category, but they're going to force turnovers and get sacks and create kind of negative, catastrophic plays to where it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's what you want to do as a defense anyway, to be honest with you. You want to pressure the quarterback, not sack them. I know everybody gets so caught up in sacking the quarterback and all, but a sack is like TJ Watt for the Steelers, his brother JJ says, celebrate a sack because they're rare. And it's hard to get a sack. It's rare. So you celebrate it when you do. That's why you see defensive ends and linebackers celebrate sacks because they're hard to get. And I know fans don't understand, but it is. It's hard. So your goal is not to sack the quarterback. Your goal is to pressure the quarterback, get him off timing, get him out of his spot, do anything you can to disrupt the timing of the throw and everything. And Clemson did that Saturday. Whether they had guys hands up in the face, whether they were dropping 6 or 7 guys into coverage, whether they were bringing the linebackers from the outside blitzing. They still got 3 sacks, and that's what you want to do. But they also, just like you mentioned, Alex, they put pressure, and both interceptions came from the quarterback being rushed, not settling in, and he had to get rid of the ball faster than he wanted to, and it resulted in 2 interceptions for Clemson and back-to-back drives that allowed Clemson to really kind of take control of the game. And, yeah, Wake Forest got that touchdown, but right back came the offense like it was nothing. And it was 28-14. Once they went up 21-7, you never felt like Clemson was in any danger, right? I mean, that's the way I felt.
Yeah. I mean, really, after they answered the touchdown drive, the first touchdown, you didn't feel as much concern. That's just, I mean, also part of that's the opponent. It's Wake Forest. They had a loser record. Nobody really scares you. The receiver, not Iomanner. That's Stanford. But the receiver for Wake Forest maybe scares you a little bit, but the quarterback doesn't scare you. The defense doesn't scare you. And that was a good thing to see from Clemson too. They weren't intimidated by being in a position they hadn't been in yet this year. They trailed the first quarter for the first time, all year.
Since Georgia.
And they didn't get uncomfortable.
Yeah, first time all year they trailed in the first quarter. First time since Georgia that they trailed in a game. It was definitely a very complete performance, I thought, by Clemson. And, and I want to talk about the next thing, what kind of in that recap is Cade Klubnik. Alex, I'm going to let you say this because you have been harping on this all year. Go ahead and announce it.
I feel like there's probably been, I don't know, 4 times when Cade Klubnik should have been the ACC quarterback of the year or of the week, not of the year, of the week. He shared it once with Cam Ward. It's about time he got the award for himself. It's probably only because Cam Ward didn't play this week. Cam Ward could have thrown 3 interceptions, fumbled twice, but if he threw for 4 touchdowns, he would have shared it with Cade last week. But man, a heck of a performance by Cade. And like you said, he was rattled a little bit early. He was high on a couple balls. He was low on a couple balls. And really just settled in. I mean, 31 for 41, 309, and 3 touchdowns. Hard to beat that. 7.5 yards per completion. That'll get the job done every single time. And again, just kind of seeing him show that composure. He didn't hit the early route, the early out route. And that's kind of, you look back at that Georgia game and you're like, oh, if he hits that early out, then, he's rolling. He didn't hit that early pass this past week. But was able to rebound and find his groove. Yeah,
he missed Troy Stellato, who was wide open and probably scores. I mean, he's cutting across the middle. And the thing was also this week, he saw Troy Stellato, and that was the one because it seems like the only guy he hasn't really seen this year is Troy Stellato at times. And that's it. Not that there's anything wrong with the guys he has been seeing, but, Stellato's been open a lot this year. And so he did see him, and he throws across the middle, and he got so excited, I thought, because that's going for a touchdown. It really is. I mean, it's because Troy's got some burners, and they're not catching them. And but he got a little anxious and threw it too high. Then on the next play, he comes back, gets a little pressured. Probably should have dumped it off to Maffa on that and just let Maffa run over the guy like he was running over everybody. But instead, he tried to find Brenny Stoll. I'm okay with the decision because if he throws a better ball, that's a first down. Clemson keeps moving the ball, but he short hopped it, and that is what it is. And so you're thinking at that time, oh man, maybe he's not on today. Maybe this is the day he's off. But like you said, he came back and just really hit his stride after that, and Tigers had no problem moving the ball.
And another thing that I want to make sure that we give Cade Klubnik credit for, thing that he's been able to do this year that I've been noticing more and more. Even last week at Florida State, the deep crosser in the end zone where he overthrew, was it Williams? He overthrew in the end zone. I still think that was another example of what I've seen from him this year is he's throwing the ball in the right spots. I mean, he's not throwing into coverage. The ball, Brenningstool, he threw another hit ball on the seam to Brenningstool away from coverage. I mean, he's just been really incredibly accurate and smart with where he's putting the football. And you can see now, after you've seen it for this many games in a row, that's not a fluke. This is something that he's drastically improved on. He's just not putting the ball in harm's way.
It's not, and these are Division I athletes, remember, and he's going out there and just making it look easy.
Or the ball to Williams for the touchdown, where he checked to the route that Williams scored that touchdown on.
Oh yeah, that was a beautiful play. By the way, yours truly sitting in the press box says he hasn't targeted Williams yet. Bam, right on cue. You and
the TV were right on the same page.
So anyway, 11 different receivers caught a pass. Jake Bridgestone led Clemson with 7 receptions for 104 yards. He was targeted 10 times. Troy Stellato had 6 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. He was targeted 7 times. Antonio Williams, 6 catches, 69 yards, a touchdown. He was targeted 1 time. Excuse me, not 1 time, 7 times. TJ Moore had 4 catches for 46 yards. He was targeted 5 times. Adam Randall.
TJ Moore is what got the engine rolling.
It did early in the game.
As a reliable target, just the way he's able to run physical routes and get open, really opened things up for Clemson when things weren't going their way early in that game.
Totally agree. Adam Randall making a return from injury, looked good. He caught a touchdown pass, had 3 receptions for 19 yards. How about this, Mason Kelly? We saw him back out there, first time really this year seeing him getting a lot of action. 3 catches, 17 yards for him. Then he had a Justin Sapp pass, Noble Johnson, Phil Maffa, Jay Haynes, and Cole Turner all also had receptions. I mean, dude, that's spreading it around. 11 different guys Cade Klubnik threw to the other day.
Yeah, and, as good as Cade Klubnik was, his stat line did not match Antonio Williams' passing stat line. It's hard to beat 1-for-1 for 28-yard touchdown. I'm surprised they didn't share the Quarterback of the Week award with Antonio Williams for the 1 touchdown pass he threw. But yeah, it's good to see him having fun, opening things up a little bit. I knew they were doing something when they threw the screen 3 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what are they setting up with throwing the screen 3 times in a row? Are they just going to go all the way down the field throwing the screen? And then, Antonio with a little shoulder pop. He sold it great and threw a dot to Brenningstool in the corner.
He did.
But again, sharing the wealth, that's something you weren't able to do last year because you didn't have reliable targets. I mean, let's be honest, the targets were not as reliable last year. And now, Cade Klubnik has trust in his receivers, and receivers have trust in the quarterback, and things are really moving.
Yeah, and again, you're down 2 receivers, and Bryant Wesco wasn't playing. Tyler Brown again out. So, they're down a couple of their better players at wide receiver. You didn't even recognize it. I mean, let's be honest, you just didn't. And that's because you got guys that are, just making plays every week and doing their thing. And so, you knew when you brought those 2 freshman receivers out there that it was going to change things, right? I mean, and I think everybody says, well, what's the difference? Why are they so much better this year? Especially the guys that have been here. Why are they better? Well, when you have 2 guys that are just out there making plays that are true freshmen, it causes everybody else to work harder.
Yep.
And it raises the bar. And then everybody starts feeding it. And that momentum carries throughout the room. And I think that's the difference. Those 2 guys are the difference, in my opinion. And everybody else is talented. They just needed to get that kick in the butt, if you will.
And I know last year some people kind of rolled their eyes when people would talk about confidence and how important it was to have confidence, and they just didn't have any, and that's why it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this year is a prime example of that being the case last year. Because, Cade has confidence in Garrett. Dabo has confidence in Garrett. They both have confidence in Cade. Cade has confidence in the receivers. Receivers have confidence in him. There's confidence in the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
When everybody can trust each other like that, oh man, it just really opens things up.
And then how about Antonio Williams? I mean, here's a guy last year people forget. He missed most of the season last year. I think he only played 5 games. And you want to talk about a guy that's a difference maker on this offense? It's Antonio Williams, because not only his skill set and what he brings to the table, but Alex, also it's his energy that he brings and his competitiveness. I mean, he leads the team with 25 receptions, 349 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's one of the top receivers in the ACC. He is. And he's a playmaker. Every time he touches the ball, whether he's catching it now or throwing it, he's making a play. And that's a guy you need. And you get a guy like that in your room, everybody starts to feed off him. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some Clemson fans that are watching the show agree. Just, how nice is it to watch the game and just know that you're comfortable, to not feel uncomfortable. I mean, at what point last year or what game did you sit and watch and really think that you were comfortable the whole time?
None. And then you want to know another thing that makes you feel comfortable is the offensive line.
Yes.
Again, Cade really wasn't touched. I mean, he did get sacked a couple times. I think one time he got sacked. I remember that second drive. But other than that, that was it. I mean, he was really pretty much had a nice pocket around him that he could step up in and deliver the football. He was not taking off his spot. And, you're seeing that. And, I guess it was Dusty Dvorak. Is that who it was who covered the game the other day? He made a comment that I thought was the most interesting thing. And I didn't know about this till he said this, and probably need to ask Dabo about it. When Clemson lost to Georgia, Dabo went and watched the game on the bus ride home from Atlanta. And he was able to watch the entire game because they just do the cut up. So he's able to watch all of it. And he said when he was watching it, he just felt like, man, and the Dabo told this part of the story, he just felt like, man, I saw a lot of good things. Like, we didn't look like a team that got beat 34-3. He says, if you take the scoreboard away, you're thinking it's a lot closer game than it actually was. So here's where Dabo did something I didn't know, and it's the first time Dabo says he's done this in his career at Clemson as the head coach, is he got the team off the bus, and he said, everybody in the team meeting room now. And he got the team in there, and everybody's probably thinking they're about to get, their chewed or whatever. Dabo didn't do that. He says, hey, guys, I just went back and watched this whole game. And he pulled some parts of it up. I don't know. I can't remember that part of it. But basically, he said, I just watched this whole game, and we're not far off. We can compete with Georgia. That's what I got out of watching this game. You're a pretty doggone good football team, and you can go out and do this. All we got to do is execute. The plays are there. We got to execute. The only reason we lost that game today was because Clemson lost that game, not because Georgia necessarily beat Clemson. And that's the point he made to him. Even though they got beat 34-3, he said Clemson got beat 34-3 because of Clemson, not because of Georgia. And so that was interesting comments. And I think right away it gave that team confidence, Alex. And that's what we're seeing these last 5 weeks, where they're just mauling over people. And now everybody's going to say, oh, well, they're not playing anybody. Well, you know who didn't play anybody last year either? This same Clemson football program. And they went 4-4 against teams that they should have beat, like this team is beating teams.
Yeah, they lost to 2 backup quarterbacks.
Exactly. So don't come at me with, they ain't playing anybody, because they didn't play anybody last year either, and they went 4-4 in the ACC. What's the difference? Well, it's not the players, because it's the exact same players. What's the difference? They've got confidence. They're believing in themselves, and I think it all started with their head coach after a loss, taking them and saying, guys, I believe in you. I think we can do it. Let's go out there and prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome story to hear. I kind of tuned out the broadcast at a certain point because they showed the same goofy transfer portal video that they've shown every week for the entire season and talked about it for 10 minutes. I'm like, Guys, are you watching the same football team that I'm watching? I mean, maybe it's time to find a new narrative to talk about. I mean, there are three teams in the top 25 that didn't take anybody out of the portal.
Well, the funny thing is, though, did you see the video they had last night of Aaron Rodgers and them Pulp Fiction video they made of Aaron Rodgers and Kelly? Not Kelly. The quarterback for Buffalo. Help me out.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. Sorry, did you see it?
You think it's Jim Kelly still there?
Yeah, I know. I got all flustered with Buffalo because I was thinking Pulp Fiction. Who was the quarterback when that Pulp Fiction came out?
Yeah, there you go.
Jim Kelly. So, but anyway, they were talking about that video. I mean, that video, if you hadn't seen it, like it was hilarious, this graphic. And it was the most corniest thing I've ever seen.
I like the corny graphics. I mean, they're pretty funny, but if I have to see the Clemson stock up or the transfer portal one more time, I'm just going to find a way to watch the arena feed or something. It's maddening. I'm going to find some illegal Facebook streams from Death Valley this weekend if I have to watch that again.
Well, we'll get away from that. Hopefully we don't watch that because we're going to be watching this right here. And this is CJ Spiller will now be will go into the Clemson Ring of Honor this coming Saturday in Death Valley. Alex, this is a great honor, man. This is I got to cover CJ when I was with Ipte Media, and I got to know him personally. Got to know his family. To see CJ now in the position he's in now, it's awesome, man. That to see that now. Here is this guy that I saw come in as an 18-year-old kid, in 2006 when I was covering this team. Now all of a sudden he's now going to be in the Ring of Honor. I think this is the first player that I've covered that's in the ring, that's going into the Ring of Honor. So it's a special moment for me. I know Dabo Swinney said it's a special moment for him. Special moment for me too.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and it's a long time coming. I mean, you knew it was going to happen at some point. Obviously, there's stipulations and things you have to do to be able to get to the Ring of Honor that require time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Dabo talks about it in this clip we're about to watch. But this is a guy that's a college football Hall of Famer. This is a guy that, honestly, if he was on a different team, probably would have been a Heisman Trophy winner. This is one of the greatest running backs in college football history. And he's been a dang good running back coach for Clemson, too, these last few years and developing this room. And you can see in the running backs that Clemson has in the room now, the way they've really taken on the style and kind of character of their coach. So it's going to be really cool to see that name be up on the stadium for a long time to come.
Yeah, it'll be forever, and it's going to be awesome. And Coach Swinney talked about how special that's going to mean for him and for everybody at Clemson.
That you've been able to build with CJ allows you to build everything you have here.
Yeah, I wish it was that easy. When he left my office, I thought he was leaving. And he walked into a press conference and said, "I'm staying." I was as shocked as anybody else in the room because I thought he was leaving. And I was perfectly fine with that. But I just wanted him to do what he thought was best for himself. I mean, CJ he's a one of a kind. He's just a remarkable human being, first of all. And even when as a young player, he was incredibly wise, way beyond his years. Had a great vision for what he wanted to do. He's the type of guy that's always written things down, and and then he goes and lives it out. He's relentless in his pursuit of excellence. He's relentless in his pursuit of his goals and the things he wants to achieve. And he's a really good football coach. Like, he is a really, really good football coach. He has done an awesome job with our backs. He really has. I mean, I'm really, really proud of him and how he's put the room together. He's had great impact, obviously, with Maffa. And you see young Jay Haynes coming on. I mean, obviously, he went and signed Easy and Jarvis as well. I mean, he's a great coach in the making. He cares about all the right things. But man, our relationship is, like a father and son. I mean, I love him like a son. I mean, he's special. He really is in every regard. And it's been awesome to just watch him, become a great father. His daughter's here now. which is just blows my mind that Shania's here, and he's a great husband. He's got a beautiful little boy now that I call Champ. I named him Champ. He calls him Cade, but I call him Champ. But anyway, he's just awesome. I mean, he is the epitome of the Clemson spirit, and yeah, I mean, he was a guy that he walked away from a lot to come to Clemson. A lot, and then the same thing to stay at Clemson. And then, his when I got the job, I mean, literally, we all wanted him to come back, and we, knew he could be drafted and all that, but he I just remember, last thing I remember, he was in my office, had big tears in his eyes, and they got Tim Beray's looking for him. Tim Beray's in panic mode. Tim Beray's standing out there going, he's got a room full of people, and we can't find Spiller, and then he's in my office, and he's in tears, and he's crying, and I just remember hugging him and telling him, I said, CJ, you just do whatever you think's best for you, and that's going to be what's best for everybody. And it's all good. I'm whatever you decide, man, I'm for you. And I just remember him wiping his tears away, and I'm like, I told Tim, I said, nah, he's leaving. And and Tim's just kind of walking by, and I just went to the back of the room. I just remember being in the back of the room, and when he said he was coming back, I couldn't believe it. And he goes in there and he gives this amazing talk and speech, and it was just it was unreal. He's just a special person, and what he's meant to Clemson. Nobody epitomizes the spirit of Clemson than Spiller. And man, if there's anybody who deserves to be in that Ring of Honor, it's this guy right here, because he truly did. He changed things. He was that, just that first little fuel on the fire, if you will. We had a little bitty flame, little bitty. And man, he was that first big spark that kind of led to where we are today. I really believe that. And not just that, it wasn't just that he came here, that was huge, but then it's what he did here. And it's the person he became, the success that he had. What he did in college football is, people don't really appreciate what he did in college football. It's unbelievable. He's already in the Hall of Fame. That's how good he was. He still got records. And it's amazing. And so, I'm just really happy for him and his family, and be an exciting day to see him up there, and he'll be there, when little Champ will be bringing his kids one day and talking about, Granddaddy Spiller up there on the stadium. He's really, really special.
That's Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney on CJ Spiller and going into the Ring of Honor and what he means to him and what he means to Clemson. And Alex, listen, I've written it in my book, and I've written many stories. There are two people, or I guess three players that changed the course of Clemson history. The first being Fred Cohn. Fred Cohn was he changed the whole look at Clemson when he came here and made Clemson. He was the first real star. Second star, Banks McFadden too. You got to put Banks McFadden up there as the first one. But Fred Cohn changed the direction of Clemson and where it went, because his team, he comes in, they go undefeated his freshman year, and then they go to a Gator Bowl after that. Then his senior year, they end up going undefeated again and going to an Orange Bowl. And Fred Cohn was that guy that kind of got it started, where Clemson had all that success in the late 40s throughout the 50s. Okay, then the next guy that comes in, Steve Fuller, back in the 1970s, came into Clemson in 1975. He was a highly talented guy. Everybody wanted him. And Fuller kind of set the stage. They go and they win those two ACC championships. They win the one ACC championship in 78, but in 77 season, had a great year as well. And then they go and, go on to win the national championship 3 years after that. And then the 80s, Clemson has this unbelievable success. Now in 2009, you get CJ Spiller. And then 2006, CJ Spiller comes in. And then you watch him go, and then, you look at the success since Spiller has come, and it's no coincidence. he is the guy that really set the tempo for what this program is right now. He was that first piece, and just a remarkable guy. And Alex, I was in that press conference Dabo was talking about, and I remember I had been told by several sources, if you will, that Spiller wasn't coming back. And, we pretty much had the story written. I had it written that C.J. Spiller wasn't coming back, who was going to replace him. Clemson lost James Davis also, and what are they going to do because they're losing both Davis and Spiller in the same year, blah, blah, blah. And so we're sitting there waiting in the press conference. I think every media member in there thought just like Dabo Swinney, he's not coming back. We all kind of knew it. And then he comes in there and he's just like, he goes on this long speech. I want to say it seemed like it was 30 minutes, but it wasn't. I know because CJ doesn't talk that long, but it seemed like it was 30 minutes. And then CJ says at the very end, but I announced I am returning to Clemson for my senior year. And the whole football team was behind us. And there was an eruption because I don't think any one of them thought he was coming back. It was unbelievable. Nobody in the room but CJ Spiller knew he was coming back.
I don't even know if CJ Spiller knew when he sat at the table that day, if he knew that he was coming back. But man, the way that's affected Clemson football and Dabo Swinney, CJ coming back, man, him coming to Clemson in the first place. Dabo talked about, how different things could have been for him and what he gave up to come to Clemson, which was, a national title at Florida is what he gave up to come to Clemson. But because he did, Clemson was able to win 2 national titles and play for a couple more and be an elite college football program again, all because C.J. Spiller decided to come to Clemson. I know it's probably people are like, but that was 2006, and they didn't win the national championship until 2016 and really get back to that level. But C.J. Spiller is the one that set the stage for that, and he's the reason that Dabo Swinney is the head coach at Clemson.
Yeah, what CJ did was he told other 5-star players like Sammy Watkins, Taj Boyd, Nuke Hopkins, Mike Williams, Jordan Leggett. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Christian Wilkins, all those guys. He told those guys, you can come to Clemson and have a successful career and make it in the NFL. Yep. That's what he told them by him coming to Clemson, just as Steve Fuller did, 30 years before. And just like Fred Cohn did 30 years before that. So I wonder who's going to be the next CJ Spiller in 2036, because every 30 years it seems like a guy like that comes along in Clemson history.
I mean, you did go all the way back to the Great Depression.
I just did. So. Yeah. So I mean, who's going to be that guy in 2036? Because there will be a guy, because CJ Spiller was that guy. Steve Fuller was that guy, and Fred Cohn was that guy. And, I remember listening to the story of Urban Meyer talking about C.J. Spiller, and he goes into his coach's room, and he's mad. Anybody knows Urban Meyer, he has got a very hot temper, okay?
Wait, you're not talking about the same guy that kicked the kicker?
No, yes, exactly. So Urban Meyer goes into his coach's room, and he pounds his fist down on his desk, and he says, why in the world did we lose C.J. Spiller to Clemson of all places? And then his defensive coordinator, who ended up coaching at South Carolina, also. Oh my goodness, help me out. He coached Texas. Charlie Strong. Yeah. Charlie Strong says, "Coach, you've never been to Clemson, have you?" And everybody's like, "No." And he explained to him. He's like, "We can't explain it, but Clemson's different, man." And they get players like that sometimes because they're just Clemson. And when you go to Clemson, you'll understand why C.J. Spiller picked Clemson over us. And that's the greatest compliment. And Urban Meyer later said when he first came to Clemson that time, he's like, I get it now. I get why fans, the players love to come here. Why the fans love it so much and the alumni love it so much. He said he got it, and so What a great story, testimony for Clemson, and it's C.J. Spiller is the reason why.
Yeah, and maybe Champ will be the guy in 2036.
Maybe so, because Champ's 4 years old, so it's 12 years from now. Maybe Champ Spiller is the guy.
Maybe Champ's the guy. I also think that's so funny. Dabo,
or otherwise known as Cade.
Yeah, Dabo renamed CJ's kid. Nothing more Dabo than that.
Absolutely. So, hey, by the way, for the fans listening out there, you got to get to the stadium early because they're going to do CJ before the game because CJ's obviously got to work. He's got to coach. So they're going to do his ceremony early. So you want to be in the stadium to be part of that, witness that. CJ's going to have his whole family there. It's going to be awesome. And here's another part of CJ's story that I love is CJ's mama. CJ's mama, she didn't want CJ to come to Clemson, and she was mad when he did. She wanted CJ to leave Clemson after his freshman year, his freshman year, after the Kentucky game, and it looked like CJ was going to, but CJ came back, and then this guy named Dabo Swinney talked him into coming back because CJ told us, his mama had pretty much talked him into leaving Clemson, and so when he left Florida, Lake Butler, to come back to Clemson, he's coming back. She didn't want him to come to Clemson because she's like, no, I don't want you to go back because I'm afraid you'll end up
Dabo
staying.
Swinney guy's going to talk you into staying.
and sure enough, that's what happened. And she was so mad at Dabo and mad at that situation when it happened. And then when Dabo went with CJ again on his own, just like he chose Clemson over Florida without her knowing, because he sent her, if people don't know, during the press conference to announce he was going to Clemson, he slips his mom a little note and tells her in the press conference where he's going as he's making his way to the podium to tell everybody. And she was just like stunned. Then he's leaving Clemson, going to go to transfer to Florida after his freshman year. And then he goes to Clemson and Dabo talks to him and he changes his mind and stays at Clemson, calls his mom up and says, Mom, I'm staying. Well, mama wasn't happy. And then, he decides to go, instead of going pro a year early, he again surprises his mom who thinks he's going pro. And she finds out, like the rest of us, he returned for his senior year at Clemson. So you can imagine her disdain for Dabo Swinney and Clemson at this time because, all three times her son's gone against his mother's wishes. But later on, she understood, and she loves Clemson now, and she loves CJ because she saw what Clemson did for CJ and what CJ's done for Clemson and how the Clemson people love CJ so much. And now, that's to me, that's my favorite part of this whole story of CJ Spiller is how his mom came to love Clemson every bit as much as her son did because she saw what Clemson has meant to CJ and what CJ has meant to Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, I only had one Clemson football jersey as a kid, and you're going to hate what color it was. It was the purple 28. That's the only jersey I had because, I mean, when you think of that jersey, when I think of that jersey, or Clemson fans my age think of that jersey, that's what they think of is CJ Spiller wearing that jersey in that Georgia Tech game. And, CJ was the man. He's still the man, and he's now, forever going to be the man at Clemson. And, Dabo talked about it too, that CJ doesn't get the national recognition that he deserves. Mm-hmm. He didn't when he was a player, and he doesn't now. I mean, even to some degree when he was in the NFL, didn't get recognition for what he was doing at that level.
That's true.
But Clemson people are always going to remember what CJ did, and Saturday is going to be a great example of it. So I hope everybody is there early in the stadium to welcome CJ to the Ring of Honor, and also to welcome back Tony Elliott to Clemson, which will be probably the most unfriendly that Tony Elliott's ever seen Death Valley.
It might be a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think it will be because I think Clemson fans are appreciative of Tony. He's one of their own. Not only is he a former coach coming back, he's a former player too, a former walk-on. Yeah. I will give Robert credit for this. Robert's calling it the walk-on bowl. Robert McRae over at Clemson Insider, he's calling it the walk-on bowl. He did that in our Tuesday Tiger Talk today, and I can't agree more with him. It is the walk-on bowl. Tony loves Clemson. I mean, Tony Elliott epitomizes Clemson when everything he is and who he is, and so he's just a great guy. Look, he was my my running accountability partner. And ever since Tony left, I've gotten fat. So, it's on me, Tony, not you. I'm the reason why.
It's all Will's fault.
But I've gotten fat because, me and Tony used to see each other. We'd run all the time, and he'd be running the other way. And me and him would always say, all right, go see you here tomorrow. Right. And so we were held each other accountable every time we saw each other running. So I need to get back into that. So, but man, Tony's a great guy, dude. And I'm so excited to see him on Saturday. And I'm so excited to see how his team's doing, how he's turning that program around up at Virginia. And Dabo Swinney, probably as happy as anybody, Alex, to see Tony Elliott coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what Tony Elliott had to say about his return to Clemson in his press conference this week.
I think before the game, and again, to be honest with you, I really haven't had a ton of emotion, going into it. Like it's really, there's so much that goes into preparing for a game. That's really all I've been focused on. And then I've also been mindful too that I did not want this game to be about me. And I told the players that like this ain't about me. This is about you guys going down there and playing your best game. And my job is to help prepare you. I'm pretty sure pregame, there'll be some smiles and some laughs and all of that'll be good. But once they blow the whistle and kick the ball off, like it's like any other game. To be honest with you, you really don't pay attention much to what's on the other sideline, right? And I really like Coach Clawson. And I think the world of him and have gotten to know him, over the last 3 years. But once the ball's kicked off, like you're just focusing on doing your job. There's so much going on. So he's a competitor. And one thing I know is when it's go time, he's gonna be trying to put it on us, right? Like they're gonna be competitive. They're gonna want to win the game, and he's not gonna be thinking about, oh, that's Coach Elliott over there. No, they're coming, right? So we got to have our guys with the same mindset because it's gonna be a battle.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, Tony. First of all, Tony, I love you, buddy, but it's not any other game. Your players are definitely understand that you're going back to where you got your street cred, if you will, right? I mean, they know this is where you this is where you hung up your hat, man, and how you became who you are. And this is not just any game. And Dabo is not Dave Clawson. I was like, well, I've known Dave Clawson for 3 years. No, Tony, that's Dabo over there. That's not the same. You know it. I know it. Everybody in this podcast knows it.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's saying there's not any emotions. I know my internet's bad, so you're probably getting every other word. But I know he said that there's not a lot of emotion in preparation, but I'm sure, like any Clemson alum, when Tony Elliott walks into Death Valley on Saturday, or when he pulls into Clemson on Friday afternoon, there's going to be some emotion. And I can't imagine trying to have to coach a football team to go win a game, dealing with that. But Tony's a hell of a football coach, and I'm sure that's not going to be an issue for him. But it is going to be an interesting scenario for both him and Dabo, because I know as much as you say you don't look across the field at the other sideline, it's going to be hard for Tony especially not to look up at the hill or look up in the stands or see CJ's name in the Ring of Honor. It's going to be challenging to deal with those emotions, I'm for sure, but a sweet moment, sweet homecoming for Tony.
Absolutely. And, Dabo Swinney kind of talked a little bit about some of those things you were talking about, what the emotions are going to be like for him going into Saturday's game against the Cavaliers.
Yeah, he had several opportunities, over the years, but Tony, like myself, is a person of faith, and he's very prayerful in whatever he does. He doesn't make any decision without really, being led by the Spirit. And that, to me, I think that's how you go. Everybody should make their decisions. And when you live your life that way, sometimes decisions you make may not make sense to people who aren't of faith. It's just, which is fine. But I think that's the biggest answer I give you is he was very prayerful about it. And he really felt like that's where the right step for him was. And honestly, I did too. I thought it was a great opportunity and a great fit. And again, he had a couple more that were staring at him in that moment too. Again, I had no idea what was coming down the pipe for him, but obviously with all the tragedy that he dealt with the first year, I always say, man, God directs our path, and I think he was just what Virginia needed in that moment. And I would say that the administration there probably got a chance to see firsthand what kind of leader he is, and the depth of his soul and spirit, and how he was able to help them navigate a very, an unimaginable situation. So to me, he's again a person of faith, and the best way I can answer is I think that's God directed him there.
Yeah, Dabo Swinney, and he got emotional later on when I Bleav our good friend Pete Acabelli asked him a question about Tony and their relationship, and Dabo got emotional and was really almost came to tears as he talked about the moment when he told Tony Elliott he was going to hire him at Clemson and he was going to get the job, and then what he meant, what Tony Elliott means to him, and if you haven't seen that, people need to go back and watch that. It was pretty emotional.
Yeah, and June, a great point here, talking about how Clemson fans should have respect for Tony Elliott, and I think Clemson fans got in this kind of mood for a couple years, just about I don't know, maybe feeling like the program got stagnant, and I think some people attributed that to Tony because he was the leader of the offense, but I think 2 years removed. A couple years removed now that Clemson fans recognize what Tony Elliott meant to the Clemson program.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who won national championships for you. This is a guy that invested his life in Clemson, and he's always going to be a Clemson man. And I think Clemson fans recognize that now, and it's probably a really good time for this reunion to happen. That there's been a little bit of space since when Tony was at Clemson, and since Tony's dealt with the things that he's had to deal with at Virginia that Dabo mentioned. It's a really good time for this reunion to be happening.
Yeah, and my Tony Elliott, to let people understand how hard he worked for Clemson. I remember there was a game Clemson played. It was a night game, and Clemson won, but the offense didn't look that good. This is after Trevor Lawrence, and Tony, the next day I went up there to the facility because I had to hand something off to somebody. And so we're sitting outside talking outside the facility, and it's early in the morning. And I'm like, here comes Tony walking up by himself. There's nobody in the parking lot but us three. And Tony just, comes walking up there, starts talking to us. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm like, you guys didn't get back till wee hours of the morning. I mean, I didn't either, but but they, I'm not having to coach a football game and all. And he's like, I need some stuff I gotta go check on. And he's like, so he did that from like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then he went to church, went home, took his family to church, did the church thing, and then was back up there by 1 o'clock that afternoon, working again. That's give you a little insight of who Tony Elliott is and how much he cares about what he's doing, how much he cared about Clemson at that time. And so for people to think at that time that Tony Elliott was stagnant and didn't care, that's wrong. That guy was working his tail off to try to fix what was going on. I Bleav that was a 2021 season, I Bleav, is when that was. So he was working his butt off to fix things.
Yeah, and that anecdote I feel like kind of describes the way Tony Elliott's always been. I mean, he's the guy that worked his way from a walk-on to being on the field, to being a captain. It's a guy that, worked his way to an engineering degree and a really successful career, but then, had a passion for coaching and took the long road to be a college football head coach. This guy, he didn't take the easy road. He didn't go from player to GA to getting promotions. I mean, he coached high school football. He went to South Carolina State. He came back to Clemson. He coached a position that he didn't know anything about, and then worked his way to being a coordinator when he never called a play, and worked his way to being a head coach. So I feel like that anecdote really, really describes everything that kind of encapsulates who Tony Elliott is.
Yeah. First of all, hey Virgil, we see you out there on Facebook from Manchester, England. We appreciate you watching, my friend.
Manchester.
Yeah, we appreciate you watching. That's awesome, man.
We're going worldwide.
Always good to see people from across the pond saying hello to us. So we appreciate you. We appreciate all you guys watching us. Alex, we still got a little bit left here in the podcast. Obviously, there's a football game to be played. And so we're going to talk about that football game. As number 10, Clemson hosts Virginia this week in Death Valley. That's going to be a noon kickoff on ACC Network, excuse me. So Virginia at number 10, Clemson, noon kickoff, ACC Network. This one's, Alex, this is interesting because a lot of people just think Clemson's going to just show up and roll over them. But I'm going to tell you what, if there's anything you need to know about Tony Elliott, his team's going to come and play hard. And even when they were struggling after the whole shooting stuff and everything that first year, even when they were struggling last year, his teams played hard. Last year they had 5 losses or 3 points or less or something like that. I mean, that tells you how hard they played. This year, their 2 losses easily could have been 2 wins. Yeah. They lost to Maryland in a game 27-24 where they turned the ball over 4 times, still had a chance to win the game. And then last week in a great game against Louisville, Louisville came back, got a score late in the game to beat them 24-20. But they were right there. Louisville's got more talent than they do. Maryland's got more talent than they do. I can tell you that right now. I know. Those teams got more talent than Tony has. But Tony's teams play hard. And so Clemson, yes, got more talent. And Clemson, yes, should win this game. And there's a reason why Clemson's a 21-point favorite. But Dabo's letting his players know, hey, guys, I know this guy over here. I know what his mentality is, and I know what kind of team he's going to bring to Death Valley. And we got to be ready to play this game because they're not a bad football team.
Yeah, I mean, I watched pretty much all of that Louisville game on Saturday. And you talk about a guy who kind of takes on the identity of his head coach. That's kind of the way I see Calandria, the quarterback there for Virginia. Maybe he's not the most talented guy, but he's a gamer. He's going to make plays. He's going to put his body on the line. He doesn't have much protecting him up front, but he kind of just finds a way to make plays, and that's kind of how I feel about their team as a whole. They just have gamers. They don't have the 4-star to 5-star guy. They got Kobe Pace back there in the backfield.
Clemson guy.
Clemson fans know a lot about how talented he is. But the Calandria kid, he's kind of like an X factor to me. He's a little bit up and down, a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. But if he's on, he's a gamer. I mean, there's a reason this guy's thrown for right at 1,500 yards this year, 9 touchdowns. He does have 4 interceptions. Like I said, kind of Jekyll and Hyde, but he's a gamer and can put him in position to win a game. Yeah,
completing 64% of his passes. The thing about him, so people who haven't watched Virginia play, is he's got that Brett Favre boy mentality.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, he runs all the way down the field, and he's, like, running like crazy, and he grabs his player, and he celebrates with them, his teammate. He's like, that's why, and his teammates love him for that. Yeah. So, like, his energy is what dictates his team's energy.
Yep.
And so that's why for Clemson in this game, it's so important that they bottle him up. They got to get him, not letting him be excited, not letting him get going, because he's going to – when Clemson runs down that hill, probably the most exciting guy other than the 100 players that Clemson has running down the hill is going to be that guy, because he's probably wishing I ran down the hill with them, because he's ready to go. He's going to be ready to play, and his team's going to be ready to play because of his energy. And that's why, to me, I had it in another podcast I did earlier. I said he's the key to the game for Clemson. Clemson's got to shut him down. They got to make him feel uncomfortable. Alex, they run a lot of that run option stuff. They're going to run RPOs. They're going to run a lot of quarterback zone read, and where they're going to do a lot like what Stanford did.
And Clemson knows the system. I mean, they know.
Well, of course they do.
They know the system.
Did you read my story that I haven't posted yet?
I mean, Clemson fans know the system. This is a Tony Elliott this is a Clemson offense.
Clemson knows the system. Dabo today, it was great. Dabo says, they asked him, like, are you kind of concerned that Tony knows so much about you? And Dabo
he's like, I know him too.
Dabo says, I know him too. I'm ready, and it kind of works both ways. And Dabo's right. And, because one thing we know what their offense is going to be, it's going to be like Clemson was when Tony was here. It really is. That's his offense. Now, he may change a few things, but if you watch Virginia play, it's like watching 2015 to 2019 Clemson at times, especially when their offense is going and they're moving the ball consistently. By the way, they're averaging 435 yards a game, 27.4 points. It's not a bad offense.
Well, and this is
a good offense.
Let's also not act like this isn't a 1-4 football team. This isn't a 2-4 football team.
This is a 4-2 team.
This is a 4-2 team that very easily could be a 5-1 team
or 6-0.
And this is a team that it's not like they don't have anything to play for on Saturday, or they're just playing to beat Clemson. If they beat Clemson, they're in the race to be in Charlotte. That's this team's mentality going into the game is they control their own destiny.
Correct.
And if they can beat Clemson, then they got a dang good chance to get to Charlotte and play for a shot at getting in the playoffs. That's the mentality of this team. If you think Tony Elliott is telling his team like, oh, let's just go take our best shot to beat Clemson and play the upset team, that's not their mindset going into this game. They think they've got a chance to be in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Tony, you're sitting there thinking, we got Clemson to play. I think they play Miami, and I think they play SMU. So they have a chance to knock off all three teams.
Yeah, they play Clemson, they play Pitt, and they play
Pitt.
SMU.
Okay, it's Pitt. That's the other team who's also undefeated. So they have a chance to knock off 3 of the 4 undefeated teams remaining in the ACC in ACC play. And that's what you're saying. I mean, I totally agree with you. They're coming to Death Valley to win the game, folks. They're not coming to just show up and go through the emotions of CJ
You think Kobe
Spiller.
Pace is coming to Death Valley just to go out and play a football game?
By the way, very good point. He left Clemson because he wanted an opportunity to play because he saw that was Will Shipley and Phil Maffa were going to be kind of toting the rock, and he wasn't going to really get a chance. So he went to Virginia with Tony, so he has a chance to play and do what he's doing now. You don't think he's going to have extra motivation? You're absolutely correct, Alex. He's going to have extra motivation.
Yeah, and it's just so – and they kind of have a three-headed monster back there in the backfield. It's not like, Pace is taking all the carries. They got Brown is their leading rusher, and then Calandria. I mean, Calandria has 242 yards rushing this year.
Dude, he can run the ball. He's fast.
Like I said, he's the X factor. If you're Clemson and you want to set the tone early, you got to get in his face and bottle him up.
Yeah, and by the way, he is as fast as Cade Klubnik, so if he gets out in open space, he could take it to the house.
Yep.
Switching to the other side, Alex. Defensively, now when you look at Virginia's defense, they're doing pretty good up front. They stop the run pretty good. I think 115 yards per game. That's pretty good, stopping the run. So they're pretty good at stopping the run. They got some really good defensive ends. Number 82, Cam Butler. You look at their banded end, Chico Bennett Jr. At defensive tackle, Dabo mentioned today. Jamari Carter is a guy that you got to pay attention to. 6'2", 309 pounds, like a Grady Jarrett kind of guy, if you will. So he's got a guy that's going to get in there and cause some problems. Their defensive front is really good. Now, where they had the problems is in their back seven. Yeah. They're next to last in the ACC in pass defense. This is where I think Clemson and Cade Klubnik can exploit this defense. If they can give Cade some time, and I think just like they did against Wake Forest, they're going to have to establish the passing game early so they can set up the run, because I don't think Virginia is going to just let Phil Maffa go down there and just do what Phil Maffa does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team, they, like you mentioned, they have good edge rushers. They have 12 sacks on the year coming in. They do force some turnovers. They've recovered 4 fumbles, and they have 4 interceptions. They get in the mix with turnovers, but I agree with you 100%. This starts in the air, and it's going to open things up. I also think, Cade Klubnik's ability to kind of get out of the pocket and move a little bit is going to help Clemson a lot in this game too. Give that defense an extra variable to account for. Mm-hmm. I think Clemson's going to be fine. I know we're talking about Virginia, and they do have some playmakers. and this is definitely not a game that you can go sleepwalk through. I think Clemson's going to be fine. I don't know that have much different of an opinion than the Clemson dude who's coming on here saying Tigers win big. Also got on the personal text line, got one from Joy Dodd, my sister. She was at a student council rally today, and Jim Clements was the guest speaker. And she asked him for his prediction for the Virginia game. And Jim Clements said Clemson wins 45-17.
How about that? That's breaking news.
So there you go. Breaking news from Joy Dodd.
Thank you,
with
Joy.
The inside scoop.
Yeah, appreciate her giving us some inside stuff. Joy, if you got anything else you want to tell me, tell Alex to tell me. And then
I should have sent her a list of questions for Jim because, maybe he'd be, takes the armor off a little bit. Maybe we could ask him some questions about the future of the sport.
Yeah.
And how revenue share is going to work.
And your sister, she's so like, nice and friendly and everything. Like she'll be able to get everything.
She should have told me this beforehand. I could have gave her a list of questions, but at least she got the one for me. She asked the prediction for Saturday.
Yeah, so she got the prediction. We appreciate it. Hopefully that's the case. I have my prediction. It'll be out later on this week on the Clemson Insider. You can check that out when it does. I will tell you this though. I feel pretty good about the offense. I think they can move. Clemson's defense, as I said earlier, I think they're starting to hit their stride. They held Florida State to 200, I believe, in 70 yards of total offense. This week they hold Wake Forest to 233. Granted, this will be a better offense than they faced the last 2 weeks. I think this is a more consistent offense that can run the football and throw it when they need to. So this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but I think Clemson's defense is up for it. It's going to be interesting how Wes handles Tony Elliott. He's seen the offense in practice a bunch, and I'm interested to see. He's gone up against that good on good.
And here's another thing that I think is interesting, relating to that is for a fact that Tony Elliott used Wes Goodwin to do some internal scouting.
Oh yes,
before he was elevated to coordinator when he was in his analyst role.
I do know that for a fact.
So that for a fact. So it's going to be interesting to see how Tony self-scouts going into this game with the awareness that Wes knows what he's going to do. He knows the ugly stuff that he wants to hide. Obviously, like you said, Tony knows some of that stuff too. But Wes in particular is a variable that I'm very interested to see how he approaches this game because of that. Because if anybody knows this system, it's him because he's internally scouted it 100 times.
And also keep in mind that Wes has done that, right? Looking at Tony's offense, but Tony hasn't really had the opportunity to do that to his defense.
Tony had other people. Other analysts on staff were doing that for Brent.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So Tony doesn't really have the inside knowledge of Goodwin, who's different than
he's not running the Brent Venables system. He's running his own stuff.
He's running his own stuff. So very good point, Alex. The Wes Goodwin analyst, scouting analyst. I mean,
so that might be a good story to see on the Clemson Insider after the game Saturday when Will talks to Wes about how his internal scouting back in the day played.
Maybe I mentioned that to Dabo a little bit. See, he's got a little bit of advantage, Dabo, because Wes did the self scouting there. Something nobody else has thought of. I got Dabo one more time tomorrow.
I'm sure Dabo's thought about it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm sure Dabo Swinney thought about it before I did. I'm sure he thought about it when he saw the schedule come out.
Absolutely, he did. Man, what a fun show, dude. This is a fun show. I enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. It's nice to have just a gift of gab, just to get to go on some rants. And we do have another guest coming next week that we're really excited about. Former Clemson head coach Tommy Bowden going to come on the program next week.
Absolutely. Coach
Bowden's
a good guy, great friend.
And anybody who's talked football with Coach Bowden knows how fun it is. And his sense of humor is great. I can't wait to see how many jokes he makes about Will on the show next week. He'll probably make some about me too, because he hadn't seen me since I was like 13 years old. So
yeah, but he'll be okay with you. It's more me. I'm gonna be more the target of everything. So let's just say Coach Bowden loved to point out certain things to me when he was the coach here, and I always get a good chuckle out of it. So
Will is his favorite whiteboard. Yeah.
to say the least. To say the least. But anyway, man, great show, Alex. Great job as always. And I want to thank obviously Dabo Swinney and Tony Elliott. So appreciate all you guys too as well. For Alex Dodd, I'm Will Vandervoort. We'll talk to you next time on Bleav in Clemson Football.